This is Meyer v. Nebraska. Who was involved? Robert T. Meyer, a teacher at a grammar school, a Lutheran grammar school. It took place in Nebraska. German Catholics were involved as well, and the Supreme Court towards the end, when he took it to the Supreme Court. This happened in the state of Nebraska at Zion Parochial School near Hampton, Nebraska. It happened on May 25th, 1923, after World War I, where Germany was seen as inferior to the rest of the countries. The quote I chose: "While this court has not attempted to define with exactness the liberty thus guaranteed, the term has received much consideration, and some of the included things have been definitely stated." I chose this quote because it was where the court struggled. After this part in the court case, they listed specific items that were definitely included in the 14th Amendment, things that they thought were extremely important to mention by name. What happened? Robert T. Meyer was teaching German to a 10-year-old boy named Raymond Parport in a Lutheran grammar school. The instructor was in a one-room schoolhouse, and he was tried and convicted for teaching German to a child. Robert T. Meyer challenged the law under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. The law said to be broken was the 1919 Nebraska law that forbade children younger than high school age to be taught a foreign language. It was an important precedent for what would become the Latino civil rights movement, which was led by Cesar Chavez. The court struck down a state ban on foreign language instruction in private schools in Meyer v. Nebraska. This was the state's way of Americanizing children of foreigners. The U.S. Supreme Court said that the law violated the Due Process Clause, which forbids government taking to be noticed and the right to be heard, and for fair and reasonable laws. The court concluded that the law was under the guise of protecting the public interest. Guise means appearance. It insisted that determination of this court case is not conclusive and is subjective to supervision by the courts. In the court case, it states Meyer's knowledge of the German language cannot reasonably be regarded as harmful, meaning to say having any knowledge of the German language is harmful, is ridiculous. The Supreme Court says back to them that the law says you cannot teach in any other language besides English. In the end, it said that the court case was to be looked at later and that no decisions were final, meaning after all that ordeal, no official ruling was set in. But the Supreme Court did decide to take the law out because it did break the 14th Amendment, which was, no state shall make or enforce any law which denies to any person within its jurisdiction to the equal protection of the laws. Why? This case was important during this period because it was after World War I ended, and Germany was basically the bad guy in the world. They were given the hefty debt in the Treaty of Versailles. Germany did not have the best reputation, so for this teacher to be teaching German in a Lutheran grammar school when, at the time, there was anti-German sentiments all around, Nebraska, with the law they had placed, no child younger than high school was to be taught a foreign language, took offense. This impacts me as an educator in ELLs today because ELL is all about foreign language, or the teaching of English through a foreign language, not to say that all ELE teachers speak their students' native language. Just that in order to teach English, they must connect the words from their language to English. This is relevant because in today's world, the foreign language is looked at as a bad thing, unless it's to do with a job. If you speak another language in front of someone that doesn't know it, they might look at you funny. Usually. And this is a video about the court case. It's a brief summary. This was the same one that you had shared with us. It was the only one I was able to find about this court case.
Meyer versus Nebraska was decided in 1923, and this case is important because it begins to expand the concept of substantive due process into the arena of civil rights. In this case, the right to direct what your children will learn in school and what the teachers can teach them. Now, the case starts with a law that was on the books in Nebraska in the 1920s that forbid any teacher to teach any child below the 8th grade in any language other than English. And the reason Nebraska had passed this law is because they were concerned about the immigrants. And the immigrants they were concerned about were the German Catholics. They didn't want the German Catholics learning German as their primary language because they felt that it wouldn't allow them to grow up to be good Nebraskans, good Americans. They would have this allegiance and these values towards Germany instead. Be that as it may, Mr. Meyer, a teacher, said he felt it was his duty to teach the children their religious history in the German language. And so he was busted teaching children out of a Bible study book that was written in German. He was arrested and convicted and sentenced $25 fine. Well, it was appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court didn't look at the First Amendment. Now, today they may look at the First Amendment, but they didn't look at the First Amendment because at that time it hadn't been incorporated in and it didn't apply to the states. So they looked at the allegiance and these values towards religious history in the German language. And so he was busted teaching children out of a Bible study book that was written in German. He was arrested and convicted and sentenced $25 fine. Well, it was appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the U.S. Supreme Court didn't look at the First Amendment. Now, today they may look at the First Amendment, but they didn't look at the First Amendment because at that time it hadn't been incorporated in and it didn't apply to the states. So they looked at the 14th Amendment, and they determined that the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment protected the rights of parents and teachers to determine what they would teach their children. And as such, this Nebraska law violated the U.S. Constitution, and it was struck down.
Thank you.